Last day of Irish Fest weekend. Okay, I want to welcome you all back to the historic Starlight Ballroom in downtown Lawler, Iowa. This is the Lawler Historical Society's 4th Town Hall Forum. We've had great speakers in the past, and we're going to have some great speakers again today. Special thanks again to Kurt and Anita Franzen for opening up this very special space for us. We appreciate you so much. Someone asked me to introduce the members of the Lawler Historical Society board because they weren't sure who they all are. So I'm just going to have us members raise our hands. I'm Nancy Cuvelier, lifelong resident of Lawler, although I did spend a few years in Rochester, but I got home a lot of weekends to party. And then we have Mary Burns from Lawler. She currently lives out in Custer, South Dakota with her husband Dale Christensen. Bonnie Keener, married to Daryl Keener. She's a St. Lucas native, and she's just stepped on full board to help us with our Lawler history. Her son, or their son, up here videotaping. I'm at a loss for your first name. Kyle. So I used to be the school nurse at Turkey Valley. I always called Will Kyle and Kyle Will, and so here I am. I'm like, oh, which one is it? Okay, and then, is that everything? Kurt Hemsoth. Kurt Hemsoth, Elvina, and Eddie's son, and he lives in New Hampton now with his wife. He has been instrumental in getting all of this going. He's the president of our society, so just so you know who we all are. Then we have a group called the Friends of Lawler Historical Society. They are some of the local Lawler ladies and gentlemen, and we could not do this without them. We have to pack away all of this stuff tomorrow, get it all put back in storage, and the next year we bring it all back out and set it all back up. So we have this group of wonderful volunteers who come in and help us load trailers and unload trailers and put this all up, and we simply could not do it without them. So thank you. And then yesterday we honored our 1982 state softball championship team from Turkey Valley. This is their display. We had a packed house. It was wonderful. And I forgot to mention somebody very special who has helped me with both the boys state championship and the girls state championship, and that is Barb Bentley. And I just want to recognize her for all her help. Next year, we plan to recognize the 40-year state championship team of the Turkey Valley boys track. And once again, my go-to person is that very same lady, Barb Bentley, because her son Mike was on that team as well. So thanks, Barb. Okay. We are delighted to have you all here, and we are honored to have these very special 4 people up here with us. We welcome Mr. Bill Sheridan, Mark Scally, Dean Fisher, and Diane Blazic. Okay, Bill is currently from Johnston, but grew up on Depot Street right here in Lawler, graduated from Lawler High School in 1962. He's been a freelance writer for over 40 years, a radio personality, a high school English and speech teacher, and he is a trainer for Fortune 500 companies. He authored Depot Street Memories, The Lawler Stories, which is a collection of memories based on his life growing up in Lawler. So welcome back to Bill.
I just say something. I've heard Bill talk before, so I brought along my earmuffs. I have more.
All right, next is Diane Swenson Blazic. She was the daughter of Reuben and Vernice Swenson, born in 1943. She's the oldest of the 5 Swenson children from here in Lawler, and her parents operated the chicken store here in Lawler, Swenson's Produce. She went to Lawler Catholic School and then on to Lawler Public School for 3 years, and that is when Turkey Valley was formed, and so she was in the graduating class of 1961, the first class from Turkey Valley, but she attended the Lawler site. They had to turf those kids out to the different schools, so Diane was in the Lawler site. Her class got to help pick the Turkey Valley mascot. They picked the school colors. In 1966, she married Jack Blazik. Together they raised 5 beautiful children here in Lawler. They have 7 grandchildren, and she's worked in tax preparation for many, many years. She was instrumental back in 1984 when Lawler had the 40-year all-school reunion. Her and Sig Goss, I believe, headed that up. So we have this thick book, and Diane's handiwork is in this book. Dean Fisher grew up about 4 miles north of Lawler, and he has lived on his family farm all of his life for 85 years. He's the son of Clarence and Mary Fisher. He attended rural Utica No. 8 Township School through the 8th grade. However, one of those years, and he can't remember why, he had to go to Jacksonville School for 1 year of his teaching by the Five Corners. Some of his teachers were Mabel Kroll Banwell, Madonna Ketcher, and some of you might remember Ethel May Schneeberger. She was a Huber. He went on to high school in New Hampton because his mom wanted him to have music and band classes, and that wasn't available in Lawler. He is a lifelong farmer, remembers changes in farming over the last 80 years. He's been a member of the local REC board for 31 years, and he's currently an active member of the Learn Singers out of Decorah. Welcome to Dean. And then our final speaker is Mark Scally. He was the youngest of Edith and John Scally's children. He was born in 1947, and he also attended Lawler Elementary and high school. He attended the Turkey Valley Lawler site as well. His freshman and sophomore years were in Lawler High School, and then his junior and senior years were as a Turkey Valley student here at the Lawler site. Mark participated in football, basketball, baseball in high school. He's a father of 2 boys, has a couple grandchildren. He's a CPA and is currently in management of a large CPA firm up in the Twin Cities. Welcome back to Lawler, Mark. Okay, we're going to start with Bill Sheridan, and then we'll just pass the mic down to each one of them, and you guys can remain seated if you want, or you can stand, whatever is most comfortable.
First thing I will say is that when it's Mark Scally's turn, go ahead and turn your phones on. First thing I want to do is, already been handled, us thank the wonderful people who put this all together. You guys just did a tremendous job. Thank you so much for all that you've done. And also, some of you who know me notice I now have a cochlear implant because I was deaf in my right ear. And what that means from your standpoint is I don't know how loud I am, whether I'm whispering or shouting. So I need your help. If you need to be louder, go like this. If I'm too loud, go like this. If you're getting bored, go like this and say, sit down and shut up. I'm going to give you a number. The number is 50, and that's age 50. And I don't care if you move that to 60 or 40 or whatever, but if you're in the 50 age range, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to start asking questions of the people that are older than you, your parents, or if your grandparents are still alive, or aunts and uncles or neighbors. I so regret not asking a lot of questions about my aunts, about my dad, just about other things. and don't make that mistake. But that same thing about it at age 50, if you're that age, talk to your younger people. Tell them your stories. Someday you're going to get old and forgetful. You might get dementia, you're going to die, and when that happens, your stories are gone. So please ask questions and tell and bore your kids and grandkids to death with your own stories. I love being here. I'm so looking forward to sharing my time with Dean and with Diane. You know, Mark won't admit it, but I'm his hero. We grew across from each other, a little louder. We grew up across from each other, and one thing I know for sure, he comes from a wonderful family. John and Edith were just a terrific couple. Johnny Ed was super funny guy. He started an Irish parade from Rock Island, Illinois to Davenport, the only Irish parade, I think, in the United States that crosses a river and goes from one state to another. Patty Ann was my classmate, and she was terrific. She was pretty, and she was a nurse. And Joe, we all know Joe Scally. He could have been the mayor of the town. He's a great banker for about 40 years, and a very good official, unofficial historian of Lawler. He just knows everything about everybody. And then along came Mark. Well, the story goes that John and Edith planned to have a big Irish Catholic family. Like, I was one of 6. There's 5 Timmons, there's 5 or 6 Leonards, there's 5 or 6 McGreevy's. And then Mark was born. John turned to Edith and said, "What in the hell have we done?" So that ended that. Gotta get my notes here. Oh. Renee was his classmate. My wife, Renee Ann Walter, was his classmate in the class of 65. I graduated in 62. And I asked her why she never married someone from her class. And she said, because I was looking for a real man. Someone was smart and handsome, athletic, and she couldn't find anybody like that in the class of 65. So she approached me. Of course, there were 5 or 6 other women in line, but I wanted to spare her marrying somebody like Mark. So she's been my wife for 60 years. My story this year, in the past, I've read a fair number of stories from my book, Depot Street, and I'm doing a little bit different. At the end, I'm going to read just one short little 2-page chapter. But other than that, I'm just going to share some stories that have come into my mind. And they're not connected in any way, shape, or form. They're just things that I thought about. First one was, my first real job was at the Phillips 66 station. Some of you wouldn't even know that there was one here. It was up on the southwest end of the lumber yard, and across kitty corner from there. And Chet McCone was my uncle, Jack McCone, my first cousin. And the station, that was my first job, and I was about 14. And I was there about a week, and Murray Brothers were our best customers. They had a horse operation up on the north end of town, and they always had 3 or 4 semis. And I was there about my second week. And Clayton Murray came in one time, and he just had the cab. He didn't have the truck or the back and trailer. And he got some fuel, and he said, "Well, Bill, I want you to grease the 5th wheel." And I said, "Okay." And so I went in and got this little handheld grease thing, and I was standing there just looking at it. He said, "What are you waiting for?" And I said, "Where do I start counting?" I didn't know which wheel was the 5th wheel. I thought about, right next to us was a hatchery, Cushale's hatchery, and to this day I don't know exactly what they did, but it was so cool when we'd walk into the post office on a certain day, and I remember I'd open our mailbox 37, and I'd hear this cheep, 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 and that meant there was 2 or 3 big, huge boxes of chicks for Gus to come and pick up and bring over to his hatchery. For some reason, I convinced my mom, Virginia, that we should take one of those cute little buggers home. And I do not know why she allowed me to do it, but we did. And we put it on the landing halfway up our stairs, Depot Street stairs. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but little chicks don't look cute very long. And after about a week or two, when it got bigger and it started crapping all over the floor, Mother thought it'd be a good idea for us to get rid of it. I have no idea what we did, but I don't think we had it for dinner. But that's my remembrance of the hatchery next door. I'll get my card mixed up there. Another thing that is very special in my heart is Junco Park. Now, it's different now than it was back in the day, because now it looks like a softball field, and I drove by it again and it just looks beautiful. But when we were growing up, it was a baseball field, and if you hit a ball on the road, that was a home run. If you hit one in Junco Park, deep center field, that was homer. Or there were a bunch of big oil tankers. I don't know if they're still there or not in right field, and that's also the home of our first Turkey Valley football team. That's where we played our games, and this was back in about 1961, 62. And they put up some kind of softball lights on the outfield. They weren't very bright. And as you got toward the road, the field went downhill a little bit. So we're kind of hoping we had that in the fourth quarter to make it easier for us to try to score. And it was the football thing was a wonderful thing for Lawler and for Wacoma and for Fort Atkinson, because there was 2 things that when they started Turkey Valley that they did right. One was to put the school out in the middle so no town could try to take credit for still having the school. And the second thing that they did was start football. Now, I thought until a few years ago that we were the first football team in Lawler. But if you go back and look at some of the books that Dick Blazikel put together, there were some wonderful early football teams in the 1900s, and they didn't have pads, they didn't have masks. I don't know they just must have been tough hombres. But by having that football team up there, no school had anything to brag about because none of the schools had it before. And I remember when we had our first practice with coaches Don Brooks, Don Vavida, and Ed Farnham. And we're putting our pads on backwards, we just didn't know. In our first season, we went, I think we had about 5 or 6 games, and we'd play some JV teams, and we could not get into a conference because all the conferences were set. So the year that I graduated from Turkey Valley in 1962, by that time, we got other teams to play, and we ended up beating 3 conference champions in their various conferences and ended up going undefeated for the year. Now back then, once your season ended, that was it. You didn't have ongoing tournaments. So we may be possibly one of the few undefeated teams that I know of, and a lot of the credit goes to our best athlete is the senior Tom McGreevy. Tom was our quarterback, and also he was our defender, and I can't think of the name for it, but he's a defender. And in our final game, he made our 2 touchdown passes to win, and also he made a key interception against Kelmer or South Winneshiek, whatever their name was at the time. one funny story about that too. On our way over to Kelmer, we were all pretty nervous because Harry Gundecker of the New Hampton paper had written that it was just incredible the type of season we were having, and could we possibly go undefeated in our second year of football. So we were pretty nervous, and the bus was really quiet. We put our gear on here in the Lawler dressing room, and Elmer really was driving the bus, and he was going about 35 miles an hour. And Jerry Balk, who was not a very funny guy, but I've never forgotten this line. Out of dead silence, he said, "What's the matter, Elmer? You afraid you're going to overshoot it?" So that gave us a little relaxation to help us with our victory. Another note that I made here is bells. Bells have always been a big deal in Lawler. And one of the ones there's two special ones I want to talk about. One is the one that has been refurnished or recovered by the Lawler Fire Department, and it's just absolutely wonderful. And that used to hang up on the west end of the lumber yard when I was growing up. And it was on a regular little steeple thing, but there was a wire hanging from it, but we couldn't reach it. So I never heard that bell ring at the time. And as I understand it, they rang it at the end of World War I and the end of World War II. It was just wonderful. And then when I saw that they redid it about 4 or 5 years ago, I had either our 50th or 55th reunion night of Turkey Valley. And there are 43 of us in the class. At that time, 12 had died. So one of the things we did that night, the Saturday night, when we were having our reunion meal, we started up there, and Tom McGreevy would read off the name of each one of our classmates that died, and we would ring it. And then we all got a chance to ring one for somebody that we cared for. I remember Donnie Winters picked his wife. I did one for my brother Pat, but it was just an absolutely wonderful thing to do. And I was a little disappointed. Yesterday I tried to ring it, and it didn't ring. I don't know if they got a padding in there, or if that just didn't ring, or I wasn't strong enough to do it or what. But anyway, that's a great thing to add. Oh, and the other bell story, that's at Mount Carmel. Used to be when someone died here, I don't know if you still do this, but it was a wonderful tradition. So when Mabel died, if Mabel was 88, the bell would ring 88 times. And Henry was 70, they would ring it 70 times. And so if we were about playing ball or something outside, we'd hear the bell ringing, and then we would almost figure out who had passed away. It's a marvelous tradition. But the one that was kind of not so wonderful, this was in the old church, and we used to, every noon they would do the Angelus, and I think that means angels. But anyway, what you would do is you'd ring the small bell 9 times, and the big bell, the one that would lift little kids up off the ground, 12 times. Well, Billy Cuthbert was the custodian at that time, and he would often let some of us kids ring the bell. On this one particular day, George Timlin and I were the bell ringers, and and he wasn't around. And so I did my 9 rings, the small bell, and then I quit. Then it was his turn to ring the big bell 12 times. So we had 1, 2, 3, and I got wondering, I wonder what would happen if we pulled these both at the same time. 4, 5, and I pulled the little bell, and there was silence. Dead silence. God-forsaken silence. I looked at George, and George looked at me like, what in the hell did you just do? And we skedaddled. I don't know what George did, but I literally went home and hid under the bed because I thought the bell police were coming to get us. And a couple things I remember, there were no bells ringing for 2 weeks. We were never given that honor again And for the rest of the summer, one of my nicknames was Dinger. Martin's Cafe. Martin's Cafe is now the hole in the wall, and some of you people that are in my age group will remember it was absolutely the gathering place. Most people in town could not afford a black and white television, or a television of any kind. So Gert and Dent and Gersh were so kind, and anybody could come in there, and you can maybe give them a nickel or a quarter and get a soda or something. But we got to watch. I remember watching the World Series in there. I remember watching Wednesday night fights in there, and it was in, for those of you who know the place now, it's in the northwest corner, and they also had a jukebox, and we put in our quarter nickels, whatever it cost at the time, and we'd hear Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, just people of that age. That's when Elvis was just getting started. And another tradition with that was after a basketball game, if the Lawler Irish won, they would the players would always come in, win or lose. But if they won, the rest of us would clap for them. And I think some of them were embarrassed by it, but some of them really liked it. And Jim and Paula had on Saturday nights, they had a popcorn stand, and that was a big deal. Smell was wonderful, and for the young people that don't understand, now that you have cell phones, computers, five-color televisions, this was a whole different way of living. On Saturday nights, the farmers would come to town, the town people would come downtown, and you'd have just a great time celebrating just nothing, just being in Lawler, and that was good enough. And that black and white TV in there. Matter of fact, one of my classmates, I think I was in 3rd grade, Bob Bating came in. He had glasses on, and I'd never seen a kid with glasses. I said, "Can I put those on?" He said, "Yes," and I couldn't believe it. For the first time, I saw what life was really like. I just think it had been a blur, and I didn't even know it. So I'm now 82, and they've worn glasses ever since about 2 weeks after that. And a lot of it had started because of that television. And the city park, I don't know if I mentioned this. I think I did that. We grew up where the Swensons lived. I moved there about the time I was 4 or 5. Then when Grandpa died 2 years in a row, and we moved up to Depot Street. And so that park had always been part of my life from the time I was born, and all the fun that we had there. And it was also different. Right now, it's just a wonderful park for all the recreational things that you could do for families. At that time, it was just a big rectangle and then a bandstand. And we used that day in and day out. We used it to play softball, baseball, tag football, and it was really a big deal in the wintertime when Herb Cutsworth and the firemen would flood the park in between those humps. So during the winter, we got ice skate and played hockey using brooms and tin cans or whatever. So it was a wonderful